Okay then, we are actually getting near the end of our team previews, believe it or not, because up today we have the Seoul Dynasty. We looked at the San Francisco Shock last time, so this is the second of our, should we say, finalists from last year, doubleheader. So Seoul Dynasty, they haven't made too many changes, but they have let some people go, and they have brought in some new replacements for them, and yeah, this Seoul, it's going to be a weird one, because you never quite know what Seoul are going to come out with. Like last season they finished 11th, but ended up getting to the grand final because the way in which the season worked. And so you don't always know whether Seoul are going to take the season entirely seriously, I suppose, is the question. But anyway, Seoul Dynasty obviously came into the inaugural season as the famous Lunatic High from Korea, the team that created a dynasty back in those days of Apex. But, well, didn't go all too well for Seoul Dynasty coming into the league, did it? They ended up finishing 8th in the inaugural season. Then the next season they finished, well, yes, 8th again, although it was an expanded league with another 8 teams, so 8th wasn't too bad of a finish in 2019. And then, well, they fell again to 12th in 2020, but they did manage to get to the grand finals, which is much, much further than Seoul Dynasty had ever been before, off of the back of a big change during that 2020 season. You know, saw Profit and Gesture come in, a lot of new faces, and obviously Profit and Jester coming in from that massively great London Spitfire side that won the league back in 2018. So yeah, it's Seoul Dynasty that is not going to change too much from that final appearing roster, but it's going to be a Seoul that wants to try and push it a little bit further. And the question is, can they do that with what they've done? That's a big question I have looming over the Seoul Dynasty right now. So in the coaching staff, they've let go of Hakuri. Well, he was actually their general manager at the time. He's gone over to be a personal coach for the Washington Justice. And then they've let go of Wizard Hyung, who was a strategic coach for the Seoul Dynasty, and he's no longer assigned. Like, that's not too much of a surprise. They're kind of slimming down because they haven't brought any replacements in for these guys. So yeah, it's not too much of a surprise that that's happening. Obviously, it's not going to be a difficult season, but it's been difficult times recently with less money coming in because of, well, COVID-19 and things like that. They are finding ways to, cut costs, and this is where they're going to do it. They're going to have less coaching staff. They still got Cheng-Gun as their head coach, and they got MMA and Bong-Ruri as their assistant coaches. So they still got plenty of wealth of coaching experience there to help them throughout this season, so I'm not too worried about that. Then we move on to the players that have changed. And let's start with the players that have been let go. So 5 players have been let go from Seoul Dynasty, and they've basically been replaced by 3. Again, cost cutting, and it's not too much of a surprise, but it's still a very stacked roster. But anyway, the players that have been let go. So first of all, they let go of Illicit, the DPS player. Not too much of a surprise. Not too much, I'm not going to lie. He's moved over to Team BM in Korea. Then we see Michelle leaving the off-tank. Again, that doesn't surprise you too much. He was more of a depth option because Michelle wasn't utilised all that much by Seoul Dynasty, considering they had Marvel and Gesture. They also have another one now as well. Definitely Michelle was a backup for Seoul, and they've decided just to not have that backup. He will be moving over to Toronto Defiant, which he will be starting for, actually. Toronto Defiant will be coming up soon, if I could talk. I may be able to one day. Bedosin, the flex support, will be leaving. He's retired from Overwatch. That's unfortunate. Bedosin, another retiree from the age-old London Spitfire inaugural season winning squad. That was a mouthful. Then we see Slime. Okay, so Slime's moving out of the Seoul Dynasty. Didn't get as much playtime as I think he perhaps expected coming into Seoul. He didn't end up being played over Toby in the end. Toby was the better option. And Slime moves over to the Florida Mayhem. We've already talked about Slime at Florida. I think that's a massive pickup for Florida, actually. A massive improvement over Chris. And it will be a big benefit to them, but I don't think it's too much of a loss for Seoul in the same respect. So, yeah. And then we have possibly the biggest loss out of all of these is Toby. So Toby was the most experienced head in Seoul Dynasty, the only person who carried over from Lunatic High. And he's the last person. There is no Lunatic High influence in this Seoul Dynasty squad anymore. And that's kind of sad. But he does leave. He's not found another team. I'm presuming he may end up retiring or going into coaching or something like that. But Toby will be a loss in the leadership sort of figure. They have replaced with another leadership figure, but I'm not sure whether that's going to be as great for Seoul Dynasty. That's a very, very big debate to have, and we'll move on to that now, I suppose, because we'll move into the new look at Seoul Dynasty squad. It's still retaining a lot of its old looks. So from the 2018 squad, we're seeing Marvel and Fitz. They're still going to be, or Marv 1. It depends. Do you say Marv 1 or Marvel? That's a big question, isn't it? Anyway, I'm going to say Marvel because it's easier and it's easier off the tongue. So Marvel and Fitz stay. Not too much of a surprise. Fitz was great. Marvel was, he was kind of filling the off-tank role a lot of the time alongside Gesture, but it worked. And it does give Seoul a lot of versatility with the rest of the roster that they have now as well. So I do like this. Then at the 2019 incomers, we see Prophet, Gesture, and Creative stay. That's, again, no surprise. Prophet is massive for the Seoul Dynasty squad. Like, absolutely massive. Just like he was massive for London back in the day. Prophet is still one of the best flex DPSs, if not the best flex DPSs in the league. I don't think anyone will argue with that. Gesture, he can have his up and downs. Still one of the best Winstons around. And he will still be very good. He's actually team captain, which surprised me. It surprises me to a respect because of one of the signings they've made. But you wouldn't make a new signing your team captain if you've got people that have been there for longer. So I also understand that. Creative, obviously great at the end of last season, like absolutely phenomenal. Creative really, really pushed the boundaries of what he could do at the end of last season, and he's now counted as one of the best flex supports around. So it's no surprise he's sticking around. So it does leave some holes in this Seoul Dynasty squad, and this is where they get filled. So 2U is going to be sticking around. Now 2U was on a two-way contract at the end of last season. He was part of Gen.G. 2U popped off in Korean contenders for Gen.G last year, despite Gen.G not having a best of showings. It did get to the final gauntlet though. 2U was massive. And then to see him play a little bit for Seoul Dynasty, and then he came in the next cup earlier this year, and he was really, really good. I think 2U is one of the most hot prospects coming up in the off-tank role right now. And Seoul are going to nail him down. He is going to be the starting off-tank for Seoul. Unless they want to run some sort of double main tank thing, which they can do with Marvel and Gesture, I think 2U is going to be pretty darn big for Seoul this season. I think he could be one of the breakthroughs, actually. And he's definitely one of the ones to keep an eye on in this 2021 season is 2U, because he's going to be so much more stable for Seoul. Instead of this switching up between Marvel and Michelle and not really knowing what to do, you just got an off-tank that can play Sigma, D.Va, Zarya, and be very, very darn good at them. Like, really good at them. He's built some grabs in crazy times and things like that. He's cracked. 2U is going to be a great player for Seoul Dynasty. Then they bring in OWLRU from the New York Excelsior. So this is the other person you could have had as captain. I can understand why they haven't made it, because he's just coming from Seoul Dynasty. OWLRU's a weird one, because I don't see him playing all that much. He seems more of an experience and leadership figure for the Seoul Dynasty in the backroom rather than actually playing for the squad, because I think most of the time they're going to run with Fitz and Prophet. Most of the time they're going to run with that. And every single time we've seen them experiment, especially in the next cut with OWLRU and Fitz, it's just not worked. They've lost the map. It's just not worked. You don't... At the end of the day, there's a golden rule, Seoul, I think, this season for you, and it's just why would you sub Prophet out? You just wouldn't. So, yeah, I don't know quite where OWLRU fits into this, unless we go into a more flex DPS and Tracer meta, then we could see Prophet and OWLRU, which I think could also work, and that is something, you know, in the inaugural season we would have said would have been unstoppable. So it's still very stacked. I just don't think OWLRU is going to be part of the starting DPS line for Seoul Dynasty. However, he's obviously a great, great person to have. It's still married man meta, and he's still going to be a massive asset to Seoul. Massive asset. So, I like the pickup, not going to lie. And then the new main support for Seoul Dynasty will be Animo coming in from NYXL as well. Now, Animo is not necessarily an upgrade to Toby. I think we can all agree with that. However, Animo was a very big influence for New York. And although he may not be known for flash plays and stuff like that, he's a very consistent main support. But the biggest thing he brought to New York was in-game leadership. and shot calling and ult tracking, things like that. Exactly what a main support really should do. And Animo was phenomenal at that. He's a phenomenal in-game leader, Animo, from what I've heard. And that is what Seoul need. Seoul need a really good in-game leader, because I don't see another in-game leader. Gesture is great for a lot of things, but he's not an in-game leader in my opinion. Animo will be that calm in-game leader that Seoul need, and I think he can knit this squad together quite well. Toby was a similar role, and I think Animo was possibly one of the best options to fill that, because you could have gone out on a whim and said someone like Sanguinar, or someone like that who now finds himself at O2 Blast in Korea. And he was a massive hot prospect, right? But he won't have the experience, and he won't have necessarily perhaps the cool head that Animo has and that Toby had. So I can understand the pickup of Animo. I really, really can. And I think it's a move that you look at these moves, apart from Tuyu, and say they're not massively young people, so it's not a massively future building process. But when you look at the rest of the squad, Prophet, Gesture, Sabiobi, Animo, a lot of them, it's not a squad that's building for the future. It's a squad for here and now. It's a squad to go and win the league. And can this squad win the league? Maybe. But I don't know. I don't trust Seoul. I never do. That's the problem. And their region is slightly tougher this year, in my opinion, than it was last year. There's no London to walk over. Chengdu will probably be better. You've got Philly going over there now with the likes of Rascal. And Guangzhou and New York will be no walkovers. So you've only really got one walkover in the Valiant. And Seoul are going to have to fight for every win. And it's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting to see what they come out with. But Seoul can do it. It's just a question of will they do it. And it will heavily depend on, I think, how the end of season plays out. Because if the end of season is similar to last season, where everyone makes it into a playoff, then Seoul just literally won't care. I really don't think they'll worry too much. And who can blame them? Like, save all of your trump cards for the end of the season. Why would you blow it all to basically get exactly where you were anyway? It doesn't make any sense. So, yeah, Seoul's a difficult one, but they have the ability to be good. Will they be good? It depends on whether they actually pull their finger out in the regular season. But this season, in the way in which it works, they have to if they want to commit and they want to get to those tournaments, the June Joust, the main Melee, etc. So it's going to be an interesting one. Moving on to their first 6 fixtures, though, their first fixture is difficult because the first one will be Philadelphia Fusion. That won't be easy. Oh, that's a tough one because there's a few aspects in play for Philly Fusion. I'm not sure if some of the members of their squad, Funny Astro, etc., are still stuck in EU. If that case, they'll be playing on high ping at best, if playing at all, which is not great. Then you've got the thing of, they have Rascal now, and Carpe, and people like that. So the meta could favour Philly quite majorly. And they could be very versatile. Whereas Seoul might not be as versatile. Also, it's difficult. It's a really difficult. I would go Philly, actually. I'm going to go Philly for that one. Oh, that's an interesting one, but that's a really tough one. Really tough one. Guangzhou Charge versus Seoul. This is where Seoul need to start winning. This is their bread and butter. So, second game of the season, Guangzhou Charge. Seoul should win that one. Then New York Excelsior in the third game of the season. Again, they should win that one. That's again their bread and butter for this season. And then the Valiant in the fourth game of the season. They should win that one. So, Seoul in the first tournament, they should be there. Because they should go at least 3-1. And that should see them into the tournament. I would hope. Like, again, this is Seoul, so something surprising could happen. But after that, we go into the June Joust warm-up, and that's when we're in a hero pool, and that's when things can get a little bit weird. But New York Excelsior for the 5th game of the season, again, they should win that one. Hero pools might offset that slightly. And then Shanghai Dragons. That's where Seoul will probably fall short because Shanghai Dragons are so darn good. However, Seoul have been known to make the Dragons slip up. So it's not completely out of the realms of possibility that Seoul could go 6-0. But I don't trust Seoul to go 6-0 because I think what they'll concentrate on is, well, okay, if we lose to Philly, we lose to Philly, but as long as we win the next 3 games, we'll be in the first tournament. That's all that matters to us. We'll be in the melee. And then, as long as they win the games they can win, if they lose against Shanghai, they'll be like, well, okay, we'll still be in the June Joust. It's fine. So, I think that's kind of the way sometimes Seoul treat things. And that's the way they'll always sort of treat things. It's kind of not expelling all of your options and all of your energy and all of your tactics in games that, at the end of the day, are not getting you any further into what you were already in. As long as you make it, that's all that matters to Seoul Dynasty. That's it. And that's what happened last season. As long as they make it, that's all that matters to Seoul Dynasty. And they made it. They just fell short in the finals. That's all that happened. Anyway, this Seoul team will be good. I should hope they are anyway. They've got a lot of quality. And just depends whether they'll be the best. But I think they've got a very big upgrade in their off-tank position. And I think they've got a very good in-game leader for Animo. If he'll be good as good as Toby, we can only see. And they still have great DPS and Profit. And Fitz added with Sabiel being great tanks as well. But next up will be Shanghai Dragons. We were just talking about them. Shanghai will be an interesting one. They've made a few changes. A little bit of a different looking Shanghai. But they're still going to be very, very good. And yeah, I think, does Shanghai round out our East region? I think it does. Wow, we really are getting to the end of this. I'm going to leave it here for this one. All of the socials are linked in the video description as per usual for Illusion Gaming and myself, but for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you'd like to give a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.